Everybody, it's Brian Shannon from AlphaTrends.net. Today is Saturday, the 23rd of August, and we had a good week in the markets. Not a huge week, but Friday obviously was the big news with Chairman Powell's openness to cutting rates. The market it began soaring just upon his words at 8 a.m. So it was up and away from there, and you can see the S&P 500 came down late in the day and touched the VWAP, but still buyers held control for the entire session and we are at new all-time highs here for the SPY, and it held basically in that month-to-date area. Now, I often say don't buy the dip, buy strength after the dip, and Friday in particular was a little bit difficult for that. But if you look at it, we had the gap up, we pulled back below the VWAP, and you had to be quick. That's the thing. You had to be really quick to take advantage of it. So you felt like you got left out in this, and that happens sometimes with any strategy. What I'd be looking for, what I am looking for, is maybe we pull back down even as far as into, let me fix this. Maybe we pull back as far as down into the 5-day moving average, or the 5-day moving average starts to catch up, it'll flatten out basically on Monday. But if we start to pull back towards that 5-day moving average and then rebuild, then we should be able to continue to move higher. The bottom line is, though, on the daily time frame, the market remains in a very healthy uptrend with a pattern here of higher highs and higher lows. These little pullbacks have been shaking people out. And each time we do that, I look at it and say, the primary trend remains intact. So we're going to look to be buyers at low risk, high probability points. The move on Friday made it a little bit of difficult to do that this time. Now, the NASDAQ underperformed a little bit. As you can see, it's right here. It's the anchor from the all-time high, a few points away from that, but still very clear, healthy uptrend. What we often see, and I discussed this in my first book, is in a healthy uptrend, we start to see buyers emerge at the 20-day moving average. As the market matures a little bit, the rally matures, that is, then we start to see deeper pullbacks, and the 50-day moving average will hold, typically on a couple of occasions. And then we'll start to see maybe the 20 and the 50-day crisscross, and we start to turn a little bit more sideways. Now, I'm not bearish. I'm not, I always like to say, what if? What if this is a shoulder? This is a head, and this creates a shoulder. It's possible. It's not, doesn't seem likely because, again, looking for reversals is basically a loser's game that you don't see them very often. You see a reversal that leads to something, it's not a common event. So basically, what we're looking at is the possibility that it does something like that, not there's never an absoluteness. Risk management is always first and foremost. So with that 50 moving average likely to continue to decline on Monday, it would be ideal to see a little bit of settling in here. Then a better low risk, high probability trade to the upside would set up like this. And then what would happen? Well, then we would, go maybe make a higher high and eliminate this possibility. But it's just a possibility to be aware of. It's not a bearish call. You always have to be aware of what ifs. The preferred scenario and what seems more likely to me is something along the lines of this. We digest a little along that 5-day moving average and continue to move higher. Speaking of digesting gains, let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin because that's so immediately rallied. Well, with brief undercut of the prior low, that is this low right here, ever so slight undercut on Friday morning, and then same thing. Chairman Powell spoke and it rallied. Now, for this market, for Bitcoin, we rallied right up to the anchor from this previous low and over here on the daily time frame from the breakout. So that so far has held as supply. What we can do is we can take a look at the volume profile, and you can see that that is a heavy area where there is likely to be supply, and in fact was. Now, what I'd be looking for right now, this is a 1 hour chart on the right. Let's switch that to a 4 hour so we can see a little bit more in here. So we had this pattern that was intact of lower highs and lower lows, and then we saw this big reversal. Well, if you got involved, great. Hopefully you took some off. Now what we're going to be looking for is a higher low. If a higher low forms in here, then we can look at Bitcoin and say, okay, now it has a better chance of going up here on this daily time frame, working through this band of supply, and maybe continuing to move higher. Right now, it's kind of in neutral territory. This downtrend has been broken, but it doesn't mean we have an uptrend. For an uptrend, we need higher highs and higher lows. We had a higher high. Now, this is hopefully going to create a higher low, and then we can get involved somewhere over in here, or maybe it just fails, and that's the alternative. Ethereum is holding on much better. You can see that. Let's switch that to the 1 hour. That Ethereum broke to a new all-time high, solid pattern of higher highs and higher lows. We saw a pullback, and now we are holding above the anchor from the 8 a.m. Friday morning, 8 a.m. Colorado time. XRP, this one ran into supply kind of where it was supposed to at the from these two previous lows and goes to that all-time high. So we could do the same thing here and add a volume profile to this portion. And look at that. That's the highest volume node. That's where there's supposed to be supply. So some backing and filling would be a good thing for this. Maybe we do something along the lines of this, kind of consolidated here. Let's take a look at the angle of this high. And you don't trade cryptos. Why am I talking about this? Because it's also just market structure. That's that angle from the high in a better condition to rally. Right now, we're just in the middle of a bunch of nothing here, so there's really advantage in the short-term rates. Now, the one that stands most to me is Solana. Solana, I did buy some on Friday. I mentioned that to others that this was the better looking one. And you can see this has been an area of a little bit of trouble recently, and again this time maybe. So this is this let's just call it 205. But if we go back, you can see that it's been holding the anchor from the election. That's the orange line. And this has been prior support, resistance turned support. So maybe we see a little bit of a lower high, I'm sorry, higher low, and then continue to rally. This is the crypto that excites me the most. I will likely add to it if I'm watching it. I don't have bids in if it does something like this. By the way, I did have bids in down at 108 and change on Bitcoin. I've canceled that, and I will consider buying it if it starts to undergo some consolidation in the way that I had spoken about. The big winner on Friday was Russell 2000, and this was kind of telling us that it was trying to behave. In other words, that this prior band of resistance had come down and held as support also along that rising 20-day moving average. We got back above that 5-day moving average on Friday, and it was up and away. So same thing, you had to be involved in it right away if you were going to take advantage. Let's look at that weekly chart. It seems to clear to me that there is now a big magnet up here that is pulling this market, and you're likely to see new highs here in the next couple months. Who knows? At this pace, maybe the next couple weeks. We've got big economic, the PCE, so-called Fed Chairman Powell's favorite inflation indicator next week. So there's all kinds of things that are always, they're able to derail things. If we just take a look at Friday's VWAP or from this pullback low, these are the levels I would be looking for. If we start to see some consolidation, maybe it does this, and then we could, get a lower risk, higher probability entry. Semiconductors, they look a lot like the semiconductors because sorry, they look a lot like the NASDAQ 100 because they lead the NASDAQ 100. I'd love to see it pull back down into the anchor from this low. And of course, that will be rising as well. So if this continues to, the VWAP continues to look like this, then our 5-day moving average comes like this. Maybe we will meet prices, that is, will meet in near this 292 level and hopefully find some buyers in there and then continue to rally. Notice here, 20-day moving average had been holding and then the 50-day was touched. And if you're a buyer to pullbacks, to moving averages, it worked. But it's not always going to work. That's not, you can look at Palantir and say it held the 50-day moving average, but if you bought at the 50-day moving average at 152, you had to see it drop 10 points before it, rallied here. So now it's finding supply along that declining 5-day moving average. And you look at it, and it's almost as if, and most likely, there is a sell program there based around that 5-day average. Now, whether you believe that or not doesn't matter, but you can see it's clearly a level of interest. And not only that, the high of the bounce so far was right at the anchor from the all-time high. When you see those things come together, you look at it and say, okay, well, here's a place to tight stops, maybe take a little bit off. Where do we see the pullback to Friday morning to that was bought? the anchor off of the low. Another coincidence, I'm sure. So what I'd really love to see with Palantir is maybe another pullback down towards that level. The 5-day moving average flattens out. Then we can go back up in here and then continue to move higher and make a move for the 20-day moving average up near 170. Anyways, back to let's talk about biotechs. Biotechs also had a good week. These guys behave well. And when we look at the weekly chart on the biotechs, they're still in this big zone where there might be supply. What I'm going to do is I've got a list of biotechs. I've gone through about 150, 170, I think, of them. And I'm whittling that list down for subscribers and subscribers to X as well, to find some good opportunities in there because there are a lot of them. Dow Jones Industrial Average, big break there. That's a new all-time high for the Dow Jones. Financial stocks behave well, all-time high there as well. Bonds still stuck in the middle of nothing here. And then energy names had a good day. They continue to really be confined well, the buyers have been showing up along the anchor from the April 7th low. That is clearly being defended. Some of you will probably say just a coincidence. That's fine. But right here we have these lower highs, and we can draw a trend line across that. I would say be careful about chasing the energy names because this is a place where we've seen sellers before. Ideally, instead, if you're looking to buy, they pull back, they hold the 200-day moving average this time. That's that black line. And then perhaps they can continue to go. Anyway, that's enough for now. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.